Hi guys, I just want to come on here and first off say that I'm sorry because I found out about 20 minutes into filming this episode that the video was not turned on my iPhone. Now, the good news is that at least I was still able to get a recording of the audio through my laptop. So, for the first 20 minutes of this, you will just be able to hear the audio if you're watching this on YouTube. And then at about 20 minutes in, the video will come up that is completely synced with the audio. Now, if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, this won't affect you at all. But you may notice a slight difference or lower quality since the first 20 minutes is getting the audio from my laptop instead of my microphone. So I just want to say I'm sorry about that. This was my second time filming with a guest. And so I have some kinks that I'm still working out with the new setup. So I'm really, really sorry about that. But I appreciate your understanding and bearing with me as I work through these technical issues. And I hope you enjoy the episode. Hey, so this is actually insane. If you want to start off by introducing yourself and how you found me or asked to come up here, things like that.
Yeah, so my name's Olivia, and I don't remember how I first discovered your channel. I think I actually discovered you on YouTube first, before not TikTok or Instagram or anything like that.
No way.
Yeah, I'm sure it was just something on the side, recommended. But yeah, and so when you were in your podcast and you're asking about people with interesting jobs, I was like, oh, well, I kind of have an interesting job. So I thought that it's a job where people naturally have a lot of questions about, a lot of curiosities about. So I think that it can be fun to talk about.
Yeah, it's funny you said that that you found me potentially through YouTube because my platform there is so small. So and I even you're not the first person that I've come across. A few people have said to me that they came across my podcast on YouTube, and so that's actually really cool that even though it's really small that it's still being pushed out because I'm just so not familiar with YouTube and how YouTube operates.
Yeah, it's a different ball game, but it's the OG.
It really is, and I'm I might have to be pivoting to that now
that
So, oh god. But well, anyways, I'm glad you discovered me because I think that's cool. And
Me too.
And you definitely piqued my interest because what's your job? Tell people what your job is.
So my job is what's called an art model. It's also sometimes called a life model or a figure model, has a few different names. But basically, this is a person that serves as an inspiration or a reference for artists, right? So artists need to learn how to draw people, and they want to do it truthfully and accurately.
Hold on, someone's going to be at the door. Hold on.
Of course.
Hold on, babes. I hear someone in the hallway, so they're probably going to bark for a second. Hold on.
It's all good.
Guys, we're recording a podcast episode. Okay, if you could repeat before the barking, because
Yeah. So yeah, I'm the person that stands up on the podium, typically nude, and I serve as a reference image, basically a real life reference to draw from for artists, because they want to be able to draw people accurately. They want to get proportions right. And it's just better to draw from life. It's better to draw from direct observation rather than drawing from a 2D image, through the computer, through a picture, or something like that. It's more faithful that way. And it really, really helps develop an artist's observation skills, drawing from life. So it's actually quite an essential job in the art world. People need figure models, and it has been historically sort of not an underappreciated job necessarily, but one where anonymity was really important for a while. A lot of people historically have not, they weren't credited, as the figure model. Like if you go to any museum and you look at the paintings and you see all the people in every single painting, it's like, those are whole ass people, that, gave a lot of time and served as, this immaculate, reference for the artist. And the artist obviously gets credited as they should. But there's sort of a reciprocity. There's a reciprocal relationship happening there. And the figure model sometimes doesn't get due credit, but that's changing a lot in modern times, which is great.
Yeah, I find this so fascinating because first off, I have to share my funny story with a figure
Yeah,
model. So so I took AP art in high school, and so then when I went to college, I got to take like a little bit more advanced art classes because I already had some credits
yeah,
from high school. And so I took a figure drawing class, and I went to a Jesuit university, and I'm not even religious, okay? It's just, it was a Jesuit university. And so, like, in retrospect, I think I can see now why they were so weird about this. But, like, the school didn't even sell, not sell, but they didn't even give condoms at, the, the health center. So, like, this was kind
oh,
of
weird. Okay,
weird
yeah, yeah,
and
I get
very
it,
not
but
me. It's kind of strange to think about. But, um, anyways, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So I took this figure drawing class. And I was so ignorant. I didn't know that it would entail this. I had no idea. And
yeah,
so, and also, what was a fault of the university is they didn't freaking tell us. So I kid you not, one day I showed up to my figure drawing class like normal. All the easels are in a circle. He's telling us that
yeah,
we're gonna, draw something today. Okay, fine. It's a figure drawing class. It could be anything.
sure,
So we all get behind our easels. Someone walks in with a robe on. I'm like, okay, we're drawing a person today. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, cool.
sure,
They
yeah,
dropped their robe.
yeah.
And
It's shocking.
and
It's
I
shocking.
I am like behind the easel trying to like hide how red my face is because I was just
Yeah,
in shock. And like to be honest, I still think about this and really judge my university for it because I think that
I'm judging
because that potentially could have been a really negative experience for the model as well.
for sure.
Like like
Uh,
like what if someone had reacted poorly, or what if someone said something inappropriate, or like
yes,
there should have been a discussion beforehand where they discussed rules, ground rules, how to act, how you're gonna feel, here's some ways we can cope with that, like here's
yeah,
what we're gonna do, like you know what I'm saying, like
absolutely,
there are ways you prepare people for this type of thing to be respectful and as
absolutely.
comfortable as possible. And it's like,
Yeah,
and also I think if they wanted to ease people into it, they could have also said the first time we're going to do it with a robe on. We're all going to get used to the setting. We're going to get
right.
comfortable. You know what I'm saying? Like it was so inappropriate that they didn't tell us. And then and I remember too, I will never forget this. So after multiple days of doing this, so we had 4 different models, by the way, and so I remember I completely avoided that part of the anatomy the entire time I did
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
And my fucking professor came up behind me and said, you don't have to avoid that part of the anatomy. And I'm like, is this real life? Like, I was like, did this really just happen to me? Like, I was like, again, I feel like if I was an art teacher in a figure drawing class, I would have said to them, if you want to not touch that part of the anatomy in your drawing, I respect you.
Yeah,
Like, because not everyone is going to become like naked people artists. Like, come on. Like, I'm just like, I don't understand like why he felt that was appropriate to say to me. Like, I just, anyway, so that was my really fucking weird experience with it.
well, your emphatic energy and passion about like the university should have like really prepped you guys is just like, oh, like it's music to my ears, because like, yes, absolutely, that is it's a non-negotiable. The facilitator of the session, especially if it's the class's first time, needs to, yeah, as you said, like put down ground rules, lay out expectations, um, and even classes where like the students are used to a figure model. They've worked with a figure model many times. The facilitator, in my experience, the good ones anyway, will still like remind the students like, hey, no cell phones, give the
Right.
model your respect. If, ask if you're going to approach, within, a certain amount of distance, if you want to like increase space to like,
Mm.
get a better look at the face or whatever. All of these things. And I feel so much, I don't know, I'm so immediately like disarmed and in adoration of facilitators that have a sense of protection over both the students and the model. But of course, in my case, particularly the model.
Yep.
I appreciate it so much because it lets me know that they are going to be perceptive during the session and that they're going to be proactive about like handling things like they're going to be attuned as to like what's going on in the classroom. And that's important because like when you're modeling, it is somewhat vulnerable. And, I'm already somebody that is not like super comfortable advocating for myself. And it is, so much harder, in such a space, and you're working, you're at your job, it's just not a place where like you're totally comfortable being like, uh, standing up for yourself. So it's nice to have an advocate in the room with you,
No, of
you
course,
know.
because I was a former teacher, and so I feel like now that I have the teaching background that I do, I I've always been judgy of my teachers who were bad, but like now I can look
Yeah.
back on it with
Yeah,
such a more well-informed lens where I'm like,
exactly.
maybe I felt something was wrong at the time and I just thought that professor was annoying. But now I look back on it and I was like, no, that was actually very poor pedagogy. And like that was actually awful.
Yeah.
And sometimes like in this instance I look back on it, and if Molly now went through that experience, I would have reported that professor for sure.
Yeah.
Like but it's like, at the time I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was a freshman in college. I'm like, literally in my head, I was gaslighting myself. Like I was like, all right, Molly, you're being weird. Everyone else seems fine, which I'm probably sure they weren't. They were probably just putting on a poker face like me. Because if they also weren't
Yeah.
informed, they had to have also been shocked too. So like, but I was just like being hard on myself because I was like, why are you feeling so weird? And no one else around here is. Like, are you not cut out as an artist? Like, I felt really strange, like imposter syndrome, kind of.
Yeah, it's a setting that absolutely requires norms and scripts to be established because it is a setting that is a little bit unusual. It's not something
Yes.
that, as a model, like this isn't a normal experience outside of this. Yeah, as an artist, there's no other space in society where like this sort of like unusual dynamic is happening. It is so unique, and yeah, as I said, it just it absolutely necessitates its own set of rules. And yeah, that ought to have been in communication. I'm judging your university. Sorry.
Yes. No, me too. Me too. I really judge them for that, but it reminds me of, when you get into any kind of religious institution, there's this
Yeah.
whole culture of abstinence, right? Where it's
Oh,
like
sure.
instead of talking about drug use, instead of talking about sex, instead of talking about all of these things, we're just going to act like they don't exist. We're going to tell you that you must not do them or else you'll go to hell. And then
Right.
what does that lead? That leads to humans still being humans, but doing things in an unsafe or inappropriate way because they haven't had the proper knowledge and skills and conversations to do these types of things. And so it's like that, I felt like that translated also to this figure drawing class. Like that same
I like what,
mentality.
yeah, I like what you said. Like humans are going to be humans. I passionately agree with that. Like, we have we have these instincts. We have these things that we are going to do. And so yeah, to suppress the conversation around them is only harmful. I totally agree.
Yeah, like I'm curious, in lieu of talking about a bad professor and a bad university experience,
Yeah.
have you had experiences like that where you felt like something inappropriate was going on or you just didn't feel comfortable?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, okay, well, I mean, a lot of the classes that I normally do are have been especially good like within the past year or so about like cell phone usage because cell phone usage gets out of hand.
Yeah.
Typic- Typically in a class now, pretty much anywhere that I model, the general rule is that you can't have a cell phone out at all. Like you can't pull it out. You can't be listening to music. It's, it can't be in view at all. And even in breaks, even if I'm robed, if you need to use your phone, just like step out into the hall or whatever.
Yep.
So that's great. I haven't really had an issue with that recently. I would say that like the things that stick out, I would say the things that stick out the most are like comments, like that I've gotten during a session. There's one like really egregious, really egregious example where like I was doing a what's called just like an open figure session, which is just like it's not a class, it's just like held at an art studio. And if you're an artist or just you like to draw or whatever, you can pay 10-20 bucks or whatever and come and draw from a live model that day. So it's open to the community, whatever. So you get like the demographic spectrum is a little bit bigger, and so you get people that like aren't as experienced, haven't drawn from models before, and so this was the case that particular day. I was modeling and I was on a break, and this guy comes up, and you know most people you kind of get like an alert in your head like when somebody is like approaching in a certain kind of way. I don't know, it's a sixth sense, but you just kind of can see it in their eyes.
You're a
when
woman, we get it, we know.
Yeah, the aura is there. And so he first said something like he said, hey, I'm a virgin to this, so you're really popping my cherry. Like I've never been to an open drawing session before. And it's like,
ew,
it's gross to like introduce like, these spaces like try and do a pretty careful job about like separating anything like sex and sexuality, from this educational or just like kind of just a non-sexual view of the body.
It's really hard for men not to sexualize women's bodies. That's
for
really
sure,
for
sure it is. And we can have a separate conversation about like I'm not interested in divorcing sex and sexuality from art. I mean, some of like my favorite art that exists, hosts that within it. So time and place, this is an open drawing session. I'm not, this isn't for that. Anyway, so he makes that kind of comment and I kind of roll my eyes. And then like on another break, he comes over and he's like, I just have to ask you your name because usually when I'm around naked women, I know their names first. I'm like, okay.
He's really
and
trying here.
It's so weird. And
so
keep in mind,
weird.
he's like in his like 60s or something. Wedding ring on and everything. Anyway.
Oh, of course.
And then the final time he approaches me, he comes up to me, and this might require more context, but he says, you know what? You remind me of Jodie Foster in Taxi Driver. And for those of you who don't know, in the 1976 film Taxi Driver, Jodie Foster portrays a 12-year-old girl that's sex trafficked. So really creepy, really fucking weird comment. And in response, I was like, oh, so are you John Hinckley Jr.? And John Hinckley Jr. was Jodie Foster's like really creepy, obsessed fan who ended up like stalking her.
Oh my God.
And yeah, just like a really creepy guy. And he more famously went on to attempt to assassinate Ronald Reagan in like 1980 or 1981 or something. Crazy guy. And he's also an artist and a musician in his own right these days. Oh my
God.
Living free. Anyway, and so I said that, and then he was like, who's John Hinckley Jr.? And I was like, just forget it. Just never mind. Just get away from me. And then he stopped talking to me after that. So that was good.
See, but here's the thing. I have so many thoughts about that because it's like, it would have been one thing. Imagine this. There are people who could come up to you after a session and be not creepy at all. Like, imagine if
Oh
someone just
yeah.
came up to you and said, "That was my first figure drawing class. I've never done one before. Thank you so much for
And that
coming."
happens,
You know
and
what I
that's
mean?
great, and that
Like,
like
and that's
fuels my
like,
heart.
and that's just normal human interaction.
For
Like,
sure.
you know what I'm saying? And
I know.
it's even normal human interaction to say something to you. I'm sure. Like, I was really nervous, but it all went really well. Like, thank you so much. Like,
Very
you
normal.
know what I mean? Like, that is so like human. But he was fucking creepy
Yes.
from the jump, and he just kept getting creepier.
It just kept getting worse. Yeah, it got out of hand. And I mean, as I said before, I am so awkward and bad about like handling those kinds of things. I mean, especially because like he is approaching me. You know, I'm on a break. I'm still on like the model stand, and I've got my robe on, but like we're sitting. You know, this is kind of happening in front of like an audience of like 15 other people at their easels who are kind of sitting there quietly, sort of just kind of like watching this interaction. I mean, like they can hear everything that's going down, and so
Oh,
it's
that
just like
makes it even weirder. It wasn't like you were like in the back drinking a coffee. Like you were still
right.
up front.
Yeah, I'm still like like up there,
No.
like it's just it's so strange, and like
See,
God knows like what my face is doing in those moments, but yeah,
honestly,
super weird.
it's just I'm not surprised at all by this story because it's like
Of
I'm
course, yeah.
I'm happy to hear that this is not your norm of things that happen to you,
It's
and so
not,
that's
yeah,
great. Because like I think it's hard enough existing as a woman who's not modeling with their naked body in front of a group of people, and so it's like
yeah,
I'm pleased to know that in those art spaces people are being respectful. And again, that
for
probably has a
sure.
lot to do with, like you said, who the professor is or who the leader of the
Yeah,
group is. Like they set the precedent. You know what I mean?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I estimate I've been working about 2 years, and probably in those 2 years, I've done about maybe like between 300 and 400 sessions. And out
Whoa.
of like all of those sessions, like that one, sticks out. And I can think of maybe like one or two others where like something as egregious has happened. So it is tremendously rare.
That's good.
Most people are on their best behavior. Even students who, yeah, are not used to this. It's their first time. They're not comfortable. I have had students before who, yeah, like aren't comfortable drawing the body, aren't comfortable viewing the body, but they have never made it my problem.
Right,
Everybody's been
exactly.
respectful and kind, and just really gracious.
Yeah.
It's
And
great.
that's awesome. And like so is this something you do full time or do you do it on the side?
It is something that I do on the side.
Okay.
It's pretty unusual, but not unheard of, for models to make this like their full time work. And full time for a figure model is more like 30 hours to 35 hours, because
Mm.
it's pretty physically grueling work.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's pretty taxing. So it's hard to do it a lot. It is my side job. My
Okay.
my main job is I work as a behaviorist for adults with intellectual disabilities. So
Okay.
pretty different than this line of work. I don't have an artist background. This was all pretty new for me. This was all stuff that I kind of had to learn by trial and error.
I have something that like I want to pivot to this real quick or else I'll forget and then we can go back to everything. Like
Please, please,
this is just
please.
how I work too. But since you work with people with intellectual disabilities, I'm
Yeah,
sure in your like academics and experience you were taught about people first language.
yeah, of
Okay.
course.
So it's something that I've been wanting to talk about in some sort of way online because obviously as a teacher, I was educated about that as well. And I think a lot of
Yeah,
people don't know. And the reason it's on my mind is because I watch a lot of TikTok lives of political people. And
yeah,
I've noticed they're not using people first language. And I know they're people who aren't trying to be offensive. And so it's more, I just want to like keep teaching people about what this means because when I learned about it, it became a part of how I speak every day. it like actually
Mm-hmm.
transformed the way I speak about people. And so I actually think it's really important for people to know about.
Yeah.
So would you mind explaining what people first language means to you? And then I can say what it means to me as well.
Yeah, so people first language, I think that like the most common example that I can think of is like instead of saying I'm a person with autism, they would say like, I'm an autistic person, um, because like the autism is an integral part of their identity. It's not something to be necessarily ashamed of. And it just kind of humanizes it instead of making it sound like some disease, like person with yada, yada, yada. So I think that's kind of the most common example that I think of. What I tend to do is I kind of let whoever I'm working with or talking to take the lead about like how they, like some people that I work with, they do use the language that like, yeah,
Yeah.
I have autism. I'm not autistic. And so like
Yep.
that's chill. And so like, yeah, like
And I have the same mentality as well. If that's how a person
yeah,
is describing themselves, that is their identity. And if that's how they
sure.
identify, no judgment there. It's more other people that are like
Exactly.
using like it's common knowledge that we use language to understand things and categorize things. And so what happens is if you are to start categorizing people by describing them first by a disability they have, that is actually subconsciously you're valuing the disability more than the person. And so it's like,
Right.
and so that's why the one I'm hearing the most often in young people, again, in these more political spaces who are liberal and saying really good things, they say disabled person. And I'm like, oh, you gotta say person with a disability. Like, I'm like, these are people. Like, I'm just like, disabled person, it's just like, it's such a minor thing that I think is transformative in language because I even use this with myself. I don't call myself a fat person, a plus size person, a mid size person. I don't. Because to me, that means everything about me is just how much body fat is on me. And instead, I say I'm a person with body fat. And then if someone's judging me, I'm like, maybe I have more body fat than you would like me to have. But like, I'm a person with fat on their body, and you just seem to have a problem with how much is on mine. And like, that again,
Yeah.
it does people first. Like, my whole identity, there's so many better things about me than how much fat's on my stomach. You
Right.
know?
It's so uncomfortable when you feel like people are honing in on like, yeah, this one particular characteristic. It's like this is just like it's like stupid, insignificant, phenotypical feature. Like I'm not interested in like
Yeah.
obsessing over this thing when there are definitely better things to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's silly and ugh,
And like,
yeah.
I think a reason why it perpetuates because like I do think this is like a small thing. Like I don't think this is like if I hear people not using people first language, I don't think they're a terrible person. Like I don't. But it's like I just think that a big reason why it perpetuates so much is because government and laws are still using dated language. What I find really fascinating is that you have something like the DSM, and for those that don't know, it's like
Hmm.
the most up to date catalog of the most accurate, correct words to use to describe a vast variety of cognitive, emotional, physical disabilities, what have you. And it's like,
Yeah.
but you don't see that language still in law. It's like it's in the DSM, so like the licensed professionals are using this new language that's constantly evolving. But
Yeah.
laws don't change with it, which is just
Right.
crazy to me.
Right. They should be like happening, at the same time, and they should
Yes.
be like constantly informing each other, but then like one kind of like boosts ahead and is like leaving the other one behind, and then it's
Yeah.
just ugly and unsatisfying.
Yeah, because it just like it could be really small things, but then it also can become much bigger problems too. And so, anyways,
For
I just
sure.
wanted to go off on that tangent because that's like a nerdy part of myself with my education background that I just want people to know about because I think it's
No,
really
I get it. I
useful. Oh my
welcome it. And
sorry, my phone
yeah.
just fell. 1 second. Okay, let's pivot back now to figure modeling. So we talked about like a bad experience you had,
Mhm.
like you've
Mhm.
generally been speaking very highly of it.
Yeah.
What about your family and friends? What do they think about you doing this, and do they know?
My mom and my sister I'm like super super open with, but like I can't explain it, but it's just like one of those things. But like, it's just not something like I talk about with my dad. It's not personal. I love my dad, but like, I don't know why. It's my own mental barrier. But it just seems I don't know, odd for our just I don't know, just with our relationship. It would just be a weird thing to talk about.
But he's aware of
But like,
it?
he's aware of it. And you know, like my dad was never like my again, I love my father, but like he's not like my go-to person throughout my life. Like I didn't talk with him about like boyfriends or any of these like kind of just like intimate things. I suppose like that was always something that I talked about with my mom. He's kind of like he's sort of like a shy, reserved person. So I think that like he would probably be uncomfortable talking about it. So just to like save everyone's feelings.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm pretty open with it with everyone else. Yeah, it's most people, everyone actually is kind about it, non-judgmental. I did have like one person that was, I'm not gonna like say who they are, but it was the mom of somebody that I know, and when she found out, she was like, "Oh, well, like it's not nude modeling, right? Like you're clothed the whole time." But she's pretty religious and pretty conservative, and when she asked me that day, I was actually doing a closed because it's not always nude. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
closed. I was doing like a closed costume thing. I was Juliet for like a Romeo and Juliet scene when Juliet's on the balcony. And so I was like, yeah, it's clothed, it's costumed, and I think she took that to mean like it always is, but I just meant like that day. So lying, I was lying.
Strategic lying is useful.
It is, and you know what? It's just like for me, it's just like not worth getting into with some people.
No, I completely agree.
It's yeah.
And because I get
Preservation.
yeah, because like I can totally relate to you, even though I don't do anything like your job. It's like you can see some parallels though in terms of being in front of others, being vulnerable,
Sure. Yes.
like and doing something that's unconventional.
Exactly.
And so you're doing something unconventional that requires a level of vulnerability and confidence that other people don't really have. Like most people don't have. I would argue that's a big statement, but I really think that's true. And in the same way, like in my job, it's hard for people to understand it because they can't conceive of themselves doing it. When you think of more conventional jobs, like a teacher, right? Something more corporate. Someone who, I don't know, works with people with disabilities, whatever it is. It's like people can conceive of that kind of work. But when the moment it's a profession that's somewhat controversial and unconventional and people can't conceive of it for themselves, then it becomes this thing of like they don't really know how to reconcile it. They don't know how to talk about it.
Yeah.
They don't know how to ask questions like you would of someone who's having a corporate job. Like they don't know how to make small talk with you about that kind of job.
Right.
It's
Right.
weird.
I know. I'm sure that you run into a lot of like the same sort of like just kind of like confusion, and sometimes you can like read judgment on people's faces.
Yes. Or like,
But
sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say like at least in my experience, like usually people come out of it being polite and kind about it, and have a compassionate take about it. But yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily the same for you all the time.
I have to say it's been really weird. I think it's just because the contrast of like what I used to do and how respected it was. It was like I did this job that was so well respected,
Yeah.
and yet it is so undervalued. Like all these people around me say what I'm doing is admirable and great, but then why is my paycheck not equaling the amount of value I think people around me are saying what it like people say what I do is so important, but why am I not being paid enough to afford rent? Like it doesn't make any sense. And then now with this what I do, it's like now I'm having to reconcile dealing with people's facial expressions where like they clearly don't understand what I do. Some people come at it with genuine curiosity, and those people I'll talk to forever about it. I don't care. But you know the people who are asking you questions because they're judging you. You can feel it. And like those types of conversations I'm not used to. I'm not used to people judging me for my job as much as I've experienced in being an influencer.
Yeah, that's true. The stark contrast, like I'm sure it was just like whiplash, going from one to the
Yes.
other, where it's just like so much respect, so much like, oh, you're a martyr, the things that you do, like so amazing, so beautiful, like it's such a needed job. And like those things are true, of course. But then, to pivot to a different, line of work and just being met with like just scathing criticism and judgment. That's it's hard to build up a thick skin really quickly when before you were so accustomed, I think, to people being so gentle and gracious with you about your job. So yeah,
It
I feel bad, and that's hard.
it was absolutely whiplash. And it's like it's something I've had to talk about in therapy. My therapist has really helped me because I was really nervous about the holidays coming up because I was like, people are going to ask me stupid questions about TikTok that I don't want to deal with. Like, they're going to ask me, what are you going to do if it gets banned? They're going to ask me, like, how I make money. They're going to, whatever. They're going to have stupid things to say that I'm so sick of talking about. And so my therapist had me write, like, a worksheet of, like, all these common questions and just answer them. And I didn't end up needing to bring them. It was just what was therapeutic about it was looking at the questions, answering them myself so I was prepared to answer them. And my favorite one was my cousin said to me, so what are you going to do if TikTok gets banned? I go, the same thing anyone does when they lose a job. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, stop acting like this is like a different thing. Like, people lose their jobs all the time for any reason or no reason at all. Okay? So, like, don't act like it's this, like, unusual thing for me to potentially be losing a job. That happens to people everywhere else. Except the difference is, if I was about to lose my job as a teacher, you would feel sorry for me. But if I'm about to lose my job as an influencer, you think it's gotcha, get a real job.
When it's like income and income,
Exactly! Like,
income being lost is a tragedy, no matter like what the source was.
yes! It's like,
It's fucking hard.
it is. Yeah. And I'm scared about potentially having to make this pivot with the ban, but I'm trying not to overthink it because then I just get really anxious and frozen.
For sure.
Yeah. But it's funny too that you reached out to me because recently I met someone who was also a figure model in college. And she spoke so highly of it. She said she loved it. Like, she had the time of her life. She was like, she loved it so much. She, like, would do it again in a heartbeat. Like, and oh my God, this reminds me of a question I wanted to ask you. Have you ever seen people in real life that drew you?
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. I was just like checking out of the store one day, and she was like, Olivia, are you Olivia? And I was like, yeah. And I kind of knew at that point because like that's the only, she looked like a college student. Like, yeah, I would just kind of figure. And she's like, oh yeah, like I drew you one time. And I was like, hell yeah, nice.
That is so funny.
It's funny thinking about like all the times that like somebody notices me and maybe doesn't approach me, just like they just like kind of internally are like, huh, I did, she was in one of my classes or something. But yeah, I love it. I welcome people, coming up to me and just being like, hey, like, how's it going? You know, different figure models have different preferences about like their, like how they want to be sort of like approached, like both like when they're on, the podium, and when they're off. So like some figure models, have a preference for, they don't want to have any sort of communication. They don't want students to come up and chat with them on the breaks. They don't want people to ask how their day was, stuff like that. They want, a really firm boundary there. That's important for them. Don't want to be like identified, don't want to be named or anything like that. And I totally understand that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my preference. Like I'm totally cool. to me, it makes me feel more human, I think, to just be treated normal and have, friendships with these people. I've met so many really, really important people through working this job,
That's
and
so amazing.
it is. I mean, like, it's really, really, really cool, and and it doesn't surprise me that like the person that you said that you met, it's also a figure model that she loved it. It does seem to be like it is a job that it just like has a high satisfaction rate most of the time, as long as you're working in spaces that respect the model and see it as something sacred. I think that it has a really high success rate.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I really love that. Oh my god, what was my one question I had while you were talking? Darn it, I forgot. What was it? What was it? Oh my god, I'm a Coca-Cola girl like you.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I. Oh my god. Wait, I'm trying to think. We were talking about being human.
Yeah,
Um, I don't remember, but I'll just say that
that's fine.
I feel like if I was a figure model, oh, I know what it was. Um,
Okay.
First, I'll say this. I feel like if I was a figure model, I'd be like you too. I'd want to also be human with the people, or else I'd feel kind of gross.
Yeah,
But again, I respect people's boundaries for whatever is their preference
for
there.
sure.
Because you never know someone's trauma too, that they've been through. So, like, you know what I
Exactly.
mean? But I had a question for you. Have you always been very confident with your body image?
No, I think that that's like, I think that's something that people might assume is like a job requirement, having like confidence with your body. But I am, historically just cripplingly self-conscious. And that was kind of it was kind of a hard barrier to overcome in a sense. So like the first time, the first time, the night before, I'd never done anything like this before, so it's totally new to me. I'd never even like attended a figure session. You had
Mmm.
spoken about being in figure art classes, and so you have that experience, at least. I didn't have an art background, never did a figure drawing class or anything, and I kept oscillating back and forth between like, I can't do this. It's not happening. There's no world in which I can actually stand in front of, a group of people totally nude as they like observe me intently. I can't do it. It's just not happening. And so I'd have that thought and then like contrast it with like, this is not a big deal. Like, I don't give a
Yeah.
shit. This doesn't fucking matter. Like, I'm not nervous about being nude in front of like healthcare professionals, like if I'm laid
Right.
off or something, like it's fine. It will be totally fine. And I ended up feeling kind of somewhere in between there the very first time. It was I had enough inertia to to be able to like get into the room, get my robe on or whatever. And I think that like the hardest part was like the 1 second it took to transition from like being robed to like unrobed. Um, but once I got over that 1 second barrier, your body, I don't know, like it, you don't, at least in my case, I wasn't, stressed for the next 2 hours. It's not like I was, feeling terrified for the next 2 hours and just feeling like, oh my God, I'm naked and everyone's looking at me. You just get acclimated really quickly.
Wait, what do you do for the 2 hours in your head? What do you think about?
You think about, uh, it's better if like something interesting has happened recently so that I can think about it. Like, this is really stupid, but like one morning I got into my car and I was on my way to like a modeling session and my car had been broken into and it was like ransacked and I was really angry. But like that gave me something to think about for like, the 2 hours. It was like I
Right.
thought about like, wait, what was missing? Oh fuck, they must have taken that too. God damn it. And I was like doing like an inventory of everything in my car, in my head. Um, but you come up with like games for yourself. Like I used to play this game in my head that was just like I would go down like the alphabet And like for every letter of the alphabet, I have to name a country that starts with like that letter of the alphabet, or I have to name like a movie that starts with that letter, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, you think about like what you have to do that day. Sometimes if you're really bored, you just count. Um, it's best when you're modeling and you kind of get to be a fly on the wall, like because usually if it's in like an educational setting, like if it's like a class, the professor, the facilitator, whatever, will be like going around to like each student, like giving them like feedback.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I just kind of like listen to that, like I'm just like kind of listening to art
Right.
class happening, where like teaching is happening, and that's entertaining. Like I even if I can't see like what's happening on their paper, it's like listening to a podcast or something.
Right, right.
But yeah, and yeah, like going back to the confidence thing, I seriously think that you don't need to have the confidence as long as you physically are able to do the steps. If you can just like kind of dissociate and just like do the task at hand, you don't need to actually have the confidence to do it. You just need to have the physical ability to.
Wait, that
And
is
so
so
like
interesting to think about.
yeah, it's like it's not a requirement. Nobody can see what you're feeling. That's private. That's for me. They don't need to know that I'm not confident. I just need
Right.
to actually physically take off the robe. I just need to physically get into pose when I'm supposed to. I just have to physically do the job. The emotional shit is not their business. Like
Wait, that
I
is
don't need to
so
have the confidence.
true. That is
So
so
yeah,
true. That is
that
so.
just I feel like that kind of like mental tricking kind of helps
Yes.
me.
Wait, do you ever see the drawings?
Yeah, pretty much every time. At the end, I'll kind of just like walk around, or on my breaks I'll kind of like walk around and look at progress.
Do you ever like judge people? Like, you ever like, ugh, you didn't get my left boob right? Like,
Oh, for sure. I mean, for sure. Sometimes it's just like, well, you also have this moment where it's like, wait, do I really look like that?
yeah.
If it's like a really good artist, like obviously they have talent, obviously their observational skills are good, then it's like I can more trust their depiction. And then it's like, but if I look at it, I'm like, damn it, I wish I didn't look like that. Fuck, but it's
No.
totally accurate. God damn it. But most of the times it is like flattering, I would say.
Yeah.
Although, like, I have to be, I guess, careful about that, because, like, the point isn't to be flattering; it's to be honest, right? Like,
Right.
the point is for them to honestly depict me in the way that they observe me. So I try and train myself not to, I guess, be in put an ego to it. I try and not think about it too hard, or like what it says about me and how I view myself. Like that shit's my own. That's my own.
Yeah.
Shit. Like, that's something to do with their art.
And
But yeah.
I was just gonna say, I do see a lot of parallels again between what you're doing and what I do, because because like you posing for people, them drawing you, then you going around and looking at the drawings can be very similar to me making a video, people watching it, then me deciding to go read the comments or watch the videos where people have been talking about me.
Yeah.
And
that's
like
true.
and I'll be honest, like the bigger and bigger my platform gets, the more detached people's perception of me is coming from is from who I really am. So I'm finding that the more I see people commenting about me, the less I'm feeling affected by what they're saying. Because it's like, I think it's just like you said, I'm holding my reactions within myself. And I do show a lot of it online, actually. But it's like, some of it I don't. And so, like, if I were to respond to every video someone makes complaining about something about me, like, that would be my entire platform. And it gets to a point where, like you said, I can't let someone else's depiction of me dictate how I view myself. Because humans, they're trying their best to be objective, And in your case,
Yeah.
they're trying to be objective about your physical body. In my case, people think they're being objective about my character. And
Right.
the fact of the matter is, they're not. Like, people's eyes are imperfect. People's, like, the way their brains are wired are different. They're going to see your body in a different way than someone else. In the same way, me in that figure drawing class, I might have never touched that part of your anatomy in my drawing because I was so uncomfortable. You know what I mean? That's not my artistic ability. That's my emotion. That's me being a human being, you know? And so, like,
Right.
it's, of course, those things are going to affect what they're drawing. And of course, then people's perspectives and experiences are going to influence how they think of me. And so
For
it's like,
sure.
I can't let all these other people dictate how I view myself. I would go insane.
And there's just like there's so many things at play that are like informing one's perception of anything. So like, you know, my perception of myself is informed by, you know, how I've looked at my mirror, at myself in the mirror my whole life. I've seen myself in photographs, I'm constantly with myself. I see myself in all states of being. And so like that is my own perception of myself. Other people, only see me in, certain environments, and they're informed by their own shit. They have a
Mm-hmm.
lifetime of, sensory input in their brain. And it's just like, there's so many fucking variables to combat that, like, it's best not to, take it personally if you can help it. Although, yeah, it's a fool's errand. Of course, we're going to take it personally.
Of course.
Um,
We are
but
humans at
like,
the end of the day.
exactly. But I try and remind myself that, yeah, it's not, it doesn't really have to do with like what's happening in my head. It's,
Yeah. Have you ever dated anyone who's had an opinion about this?
no, I think that like, how I put it, like, I think I would put it like this, like, I, I think that I get along really well, with people who I guess have like a similar sort of like shock barometer. Like what they are
Yes.
shocked by needs to be kind of congruent with like what I'm shocked by.
Ooh, I love
Um,
that. I love that.
and so like it's hard for me to imagine a world in which like I would be compatible with somebody that was like, oh my god, like you're nude. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Like usually the people that like I bond really closely and intensely with are just like, yeah, like I don't give a shit. Either like they're artists themselves, or they just don't have hang-ups, I guess, like in this area.
I love that so much because I think I can really relate to that because it's like, I always, it's so funny. I love that terminology, the shock barometer. I feel like I'm going to
Yeah.
look for that in dating now too because it's like, I remember I would have this thing where when I was living abroad, I would have such dynamic dating experiences with people from different parts of the world. And then whenever I've
Yeah.
dated in my hometown of Buffalo, New York, it's just like these people who are like, they think it's so like amazing that I've gone abroad, and like I know it's amazing, but I don't want someone to think that that's shocking, like you said. If someone reacts so
Oh, yeah, yeah,
exaggerated,
yeah.
I'm like, I don't want you to think it's that big of a deal because that means this is so out of your realm of understanding. And like, and so that always kind of puts me off a little bit. And then like similarly, I'm experiencing that with my current job as an influencer because I'm telling you, there are very few people I have dated who are comfortable with what I'm doing. Very few. Like, and it is actually crazy. That's another big reason why I'm not really dating right now. I have had so many dating experiences where men don't want to continue dating me because I'm online. And it I guess I'm glad they're running for the hills because I have no intention of stopping. So it's
Yeah.
like but it's made me feel a bit sad because I'm like, is it really only possible for me to date someone who is also in the public eye in some sort of way? Like I'm not calling myself a celebrity, but now in this experience I've had, I understand why celebrities date other celebrities because there's
Right.
this like
Right.
understanding there. Like I think I might want to really date another influencer because then they'd be able to understand the things I'm experiencing, the things I'm having challenges with, and not be threatened by it.
It's so, I mean, like, that philosophy of like being put off by that is pretty unrelatable to me. Like I just, usually when people have, an unusual job or, just something in their life that they're really into, I, it galvanizes me to want to get to know them more. I mean, like it's interesting and exciting and it's novel. I think that like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of what drew me to this job is like my drive for novelty and novel experiences.
Oh my God, I love that.
And so like I notice when other people are into that too, and I can't imagine it putting people off, but it doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't.
Yeah, it's like, it's really disheartening because, I mean, I just love what you said too by the novelty experience thing. It's just disheartening because it's like, I've had a few experiences where I go on a date with a guy, I really like him, like more than I've liked the majority of dates I've gone on or something. Like enough, like, okay, I want to see
Yeah.
this guy again. And I literally have had multiple men in the past year tell me that they saw my social media presence and they're uncomfortable with it because they're a very private person, despite the fact that I tell all these men what I do before we meet. I like even on the dates I will still talk about it, and sometimes on the dates I will say to the guy, if you want to look at my TikTok right now you can, like I would kind of encourage you to do so, because like, and I'm saying that now to people because I'm like, people seem uncomfortable with it and I don't understand why, so like please watch it in front of me because I'm like, I want to see, are you uncomfortable, I want to see, like, do you like this or no, because it's like, I want to see how you're going to react to my content, because it's
Yeah.
like, if you think it's that weird, I want to know now. But then, of course, they don't do it, which I'm starting to realize that might be the bad sign. If they're not willing to look at my content in front of me, to me, there's a sign that something's off, because I've had people be willing to do it and like they're not concerned about it. Well, I don't know. It's just, I don't know if it's a, no, it's not a Buffalo thing, because the same thing happened to me in Istanbul too. So, like, I don't know.
What a shame.
It's annoying.
For sure.
I'm like, at this day and age,
I
can't we
just
all
don't
be
understand.
comfortable with
Like, I
this
can't
now?
relate.
No, I can't relate either, obviously. Um, is there anything about your profession? Like, I know we've talked about a lot of this already, but like, is there any misconception that you really wish you could just squash? Like, if you could just like
That's a good
get
question.
a group of people together, and you're like, let's set the record straight.
Okay,
Hey,
yeah, I think I have an easy one. I think the one that I think of is like I I did kind of touch on this before, but I think people see it as like a very kind of like a lethargic job. I know not everyone sees it like this. A lot of people do understand how physically taxing it is, but like people are like, oh, like you just like, lay back against some pillows and you just like lay there and take a nap and people paint you and you're just like chilling. And it usually doesn't look like that. Most of the
no.
time, it's, let's say like a session is, let's just say a session is 3 hours. Sometimes it's a little bit more than that. Sometimes usually it's a little bit less than that, but let's just say 3 hours. In 3 hours, you're typically going to be posing for no more than 30 minutes at a time. 30 is usually like the max.
Okay.
And then the shortest increment is like, 30 seconds or something like that. It kind of just depends, if they're doing, a bunch of really gestural drawings, it's going to be really, really quick. You're kind of moving a lot. You're doing really, really dynamic poses. But even in a 30-minute pose, like let's say, yeah, like we are starting a really long drawing, we're starting a painting, and I'm going to be in one position for a long time and possibly even returning to that pose over and over again throughout the session or
Mm,
even like many days or weeks or whatever. Um, you know, it is hard to find any position at all, even one that is seemingly the most comfortable, that doesn't start to get a little bit uncomfortable after, 10, 20 minutes. It's like even when you're like
exactly.
laying and you've got pillows and, your legs aren't crossed, so your foot's not going to fall asleep, you're good, your arm's not in the air, your neck is perfect, even if it's comfortable, you know, still even around like the 30-minute mark, or even like when you return to the next 30 minute section, it's like things just start to hurt. I mean, like if you can't move, if
Yeah.
you can't adjust, no pose is really so comfortable that like it'll just never hurt.
So you
But
hear
it's
that,
it's on
guys?
the
It's
job.
not a lethargic job, okay?
It's not a lethargic job.
No.
It's pretty grueling, honestly. And usually, I mean, most of the time, most of my poses are, they're kind of, I'm not, I wouldn't, I would say like 60-ish% of my job is doing poses that are the really gestural short ones, like those 30-second, 1 minutes,
Yeah.
up to like 20-minute poses. That's like the most of it. And those are kind of, yeah, they're the most physically demanding. Um, you're you're moving your body a lot, and when you're in a pose, you're locked in, and you have to stay there
Oh
and
my
be
god.
completely still,
I'm getting
and
so
that
many
sometimes is hard.
memories. Like, I'm just remembering watching the models and thinking, ouch, man. I remember thinking that. I remember thinking,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, you must be hurting because you're in that position. Or you see their bodies starting to, like, physically shake a little bit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're like,
It's
you
been
can't help
there.
it. Like, you're in
It's
pain.
been there. Your foot's asleep. Your neck hurts. Your
Yeah.
face it is. Um, uh, some models do get sleepy. I mean, like some models do fall asleep, and some artists do like that, because like usually it means that they're not going to be moving. I mean, some people move in their sleep.
Right.
Um, for me, it's like I don't know why. I don't know why I'm this way, but to me, falling asleep in front of a group of people is infinitely more vulnerable than being nude in front of a group of
Oh,
people.
I
My
completely
whole
agree.
life, I cannot fall asleep in front of people. Like I find this to be impossible. I think that I have just like really, I'm really like informed by like basal primitive biological urges that say like
Right.
if you fall asleep, predators will get you or something. So
No,
like
I really agree with you that it's a very vulnerable thing to do. I completely agree with
it is.
you.
I cannot fall asleep in front of a group of people. I can't do it. So I've never fallen asleep. And I just prefer to be like alert and active, and I think that's just kind of naturally like what my mind is doing when I'm working.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm not relaxed. There are times where I'm relaxed. It's just that I prefer to kind of be on, so to speak.
Okay.
Um, but
No,
yeah.
I love that. That's an important one to inform people of because it's like
Mm-hmm.
if you don't ever experience a setting like that, like again, this is a novelty thing. This is unconventional. This is like only people in art spaces know what these settings are like. And it's so
Yeah.
unique and like you've mentioned, it's got its own sets of, rules and appropriate ways of behaving and social norms. Like it's just
Yeah.
it's
Most people
fascinating.
see like the final result. So like, yeah, they see the
Right.
final painting where there's, a person, reclined so beautifully, and they look relaxed and ethereal, and it just looks like they're floating, and there's just like a tranquility that comes with it. But I know that there's a process. I know that it doesn't
Yes.
necessarily feel like that.
Now,
Some
whenever
people.
I see like art of a figure, I'm gonna be like, me and Olivia understand the work that goes into something
Yes.
like this.